Welcome to the League of Women Voters and the Alliance for the Arts Virtual Candidates Forum. Some of the League's voter service activities include candidate forums and voter guides. This information is made available to the voting public to help in their decision-making process. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization that does not support or oppose candidates or political parties. Happy learning.
Welcome to a candidate forum presented by the League of Women Voters of Lee County in conjunction with the Alliance for the Arts. The purpose of these forums is to inform the voting public of the opinions of the candidates running for office. It's not a debate. There will be no crosstalk between the candidates. There won't be any comments from one candidate on another candidate's position. They will be given 2 minutes to open. They will be given 2 minutes to close. They will be given 1 minute to answer each question. The order of answering the questions and opening and closing is random, to be decided at the beginning of the forum itself. So sit back and enjoy. Thank you. Welcome to the League of Women Voters Forum on the Board of County Commissioners races in Lee County. This is being conducted in conjunction with the Alliance for the Arts. And we have today Michael Drycorn, Juan Gonzalez, and Frank Mann for districts 1 and 5 in the Board of County Commissioners. I'm going to start by asking the candidates to give their 2-minute opening. And Mr. Drycorn, if you wouldn't mind, please.
Yes, thank you very much for having all the candidates here today, and thank you for holding this forum and giving us all an opportunity to meet your members and to share our platforms. My name is Michael Drycorn. I live on Pine Island, and I'm running for District 1 Lee County Commission. I've been in the Lee County as a resident for since 2004, so 16 years. I came before Hurricane Charlie, and what an adventure that was, right? So at that time, I lost my home, my boat, all my furnishings, and it was certainly an opportunity to cash out and leave to go somewhere else. But I found the resiliency of the community and just the underlying warmness of everybody that lives in Lee County who came out to help a place that I really wanted to call home, and I have. I've been a commissioner for the Matlacha Pine Island Fire Control District for over 6 years. I've also been on the local water utility, which is a user-owned water utility, giving me some experience on local and municipal utility requirements and how to fund certain things. I'm clearly a champion for clean water. I'm a founder of the Florida Fishery Foundation, which is a not-for-profit that is focused on not only restocking our redfish here in Pine Island and Estero Bay, but also to rehab the oyster bars throughout Lee County waters. And we have a big project that's going to be going on later in August and through September in teamwork with the Sanibel Captiva Conservation Foundation. There's a lot of things I'd like to share, and I look forward to the great questions here in this forum. And during my closing, anything we haven't covered, I'll try to put a bow around it.
Thank you, Mr. Drycorn. Mr. Gonzalez?
Well, good afternoon. Thank you for having us participate in this forum. A little background of myself. I have for 40 years been serving communities throughout the nation, and I've been a resident of Lee for over 10 years. I live in the Lehigh Acres community. I've been engaged in that community for the number of years there, serving as a pastor and also a community leader. For the last 40 years, I have founded and directed faith-based and community-based development organizations in various legislative and administrative forums. I have served on a number of prestigious international, national, and regional boards and commissions in the area of the arts and youth and family, health, housing, and community economic development. I've been engaged in providing vision and confident leadership in communities in trying to develop them from the inside out. I'm no stranger to the public arena. I'm running to ensure that Lee County is a place where individuals of all walks of life are valued, respected, and have the tools to achieve the American dream. I still believe in the American dream. This means an equal chance for everyone to have good paying jobs, quality education, thriving businesses, safe communities, health services, tools and resources they need, and the ability to enjoy our beautiful parks and beautiful beaches. With my experience in proven leadership, I will fight to ensure Lee County is a place we are all proud to call home.
Thank you. Mr. Mann?
Thank you, and thank you to the League of Women Voters, not just for providing this forum for the candidates for this year, but in my first experience in politics in Lee County, Florida was back in '68, and the League was alive and well then and making opportunities available for candidates to get known by the community. So what a great job they've done for so many years. I am Frank Mann. I'm the incumbent in District 5. I will be on the ballot August the 18th in a Republican primary. My opponent in that race is not with us today. In the general election, that's where I would hopefully face off with the gentleman that just spoke. I am a native of Lee County, blessed to be such, and spent all my years in this beautiful paradise. I did my college work at Vanderbilt University, received a degree there in '64 in political science. I came back to my beloved Fort Myers, which was my home forever, and got into the insurance industry as a young businessman, worked for other people for 3 or 4 years, and then started my own agency when my wife, bless her heart, she said, look, let's live on my $4,300 teacher salary and you can start your own business, which you've always wanted to do. We did that, and the rest, they say, is history. But in '74, I got into politics, served in the Florida legislature for 8 years in the House. After that, I was in the Florida Senate for another 4 years. I have had the honor of serving the people of Lee County in those capacities, and now since 2006 in the on the Lee County Commission, and it's my prayer to get reelected one time more. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Before I begin the questions, I'd just like to make a statement for the viewing audience that all of the candidates for seats 1 and 5 were invited to attend this forum. Either they did not respond or for some reason could not make it today. We'll start with the questions now. Michael Drycorn, you will be the first one to answer questions. And the first question is, would you support restoring Lee County impact fees to 100%? Why or why not?
Yeah, so the impact fees were lowered years ago during the recession to essentially stimulate the economy. And the economy it predominantly stimulated were the builders, and to ensure that, if we remember back then, we were predominantly a very strong construction economy at that time. So people needed jobs. Those times have changed, and we need to bring back the impact fees to 100%. I'm for that. Now, we think about impact fees not only as a means of funding future growth, and growth should pay for growth, but it's also an assurance that we're not putting on more strain to existing infrastructure. And all we have to do is look at some of the recent sewer pipes that are broken, sending tens of thousands of gallons of raw sewage into our estuaries. So impact fees are a way for us to move forward safely.
Thank you. Mr. Gonzalez?
Yes, I would support impact fees because it helps with defraying the cost of growth and the impact on our vital services such as schools and parks and roads and ambulance and fire services and other infrastructure needs because of the increase of population. We all know that Lee County is growing leaps and bounds in terms of new residents. I'm of the belief that everyone should pay their fair share of resources. If not, the current residents will have to defray the cost. So anyone who's coming into our community should at least have they should have their fair share of providing, paying for the services that they're going to be being rendered. And so, yes, I believe that we should support impact fees.
Thank you. Mr. Mann?
Very important question. Lee County for the entire last half century has been one of the fastest growing counties in the United States of America. When that happens to you, somebody's going to have to build some 4-lane highways where there used to be 2 and 6 where there used to be 4. We've got to have schools for the thousands of kids that arrive here every year. When their parents moved here, somebody's got to pay for all that. And we, the existing taxpayers, can pay for this, or we can ask those folks moving here to pay their fair share when they build a house and construct a house here, and it'll be in the neighborhood of about $10,000. If they don't pay for their part of the impact here, then you and I are going to pay for it, and that's just not fair. So I have been the only commissioner right now serving on the commission that supports 100% impact fees, and I will continue to do so.
Thank you. Mr. Gonzalez, what leadership would you provide to address the effects of climate change in Lee County?
Well, as the new Lee County Commissioner, I will commit to devising solutions to the water quality and the environment, because I've been always a champion of finding solutions to protecting the environment and dealing with climate change. Lending my leadership and work with scientists and experts through working with thought leaders and government officials. Hopefully working with both the federal and the state of Florida levels to raise essential funding and expertise to mitigate the issues of climate change. I believe the environment is our economy. We as a county are to be good stewards of the air, land, and sea, and coping with whatever is involved in improving our environment is essential, because we don't want our children to be affected by the fact that we were not good stewards. And I think that there are several steps that we can do. We need to be about monitoring and assessment. We need to be about, okay.
Thank you. Mr. Mann?
Good question, Mr. Pellstring. Thank you for it. Unfortunately, there's a limited amount of things that the county at our level can do in the field of subject matter of climate change. I wish the United States Congress were paying much greater attention to the subject than they are, and I wish the current administration were as well. The Florida legislature will also have to play a major role in the years ahead, and hopefully the very soon years ahead, to the extent we can in our water policy and our permitting policies, make smart steps so that we won't be building where there's going to be water in the future. Those are the things we must monitor immediately and attend to the extent we can at this local level.
Thank you. Mr. Drycorn?
I think that some of the key words in your question relate to leadership and what we would do locally with regards to climate change and the impacts of climate change. First off, I am a scientist. I have a doctorate from George Washington. I spent 40 years in the aerospace and defense industry. I understand how to look at data critically and understand the situations that we're confronted with. So in the leadership capacity, I would certainly, and I already have, educate myself on the local impacts relevant to rising sea level. What does that mean to Lee County? We already know predominantly where the areas of high risk are. And I would echo what Commissioner Mann said. We need to address our land use and planning to ensure that we're not building in areas that are going to be susceptible to rising sea level and wasted investments and cause more harm. Another topic on that is our water quality with regards to drinking water. Rising sea level does have an impact on our drinking water, and I would bring that to the table for discussion.
Thank you. Mr. Mann, what measures would you propose to preserve the wetlands in Lee County?
I would just enthusiastically support and continue the Fine 2020 program that we've had in effect for nearly 20 years in Lee County anyway, whereby we have already preserved over 30,000 acres of critical wetlands and wildlife habitat. That's critically important. I supported these programs when I was honored to serve in the Florida legislature. The first program of that nature was called the Environmentally Endangered Lands Program. And under that, we saved thousands of acres right here in Lee County through state purchases. And when I got here at the county level and was serving in office, I always supported the local preservation programs as well, because they showed a mirror of what all the good things we had done at the state level, and we're doing it now. We just need to continue that great program. Thank
you. Mr. Drycorn?
Sure. As stated by the voters repeatedly, the 2020 program is here to stay, and I will continue to champion that as your next county commissioner for District 1. Some things that I would like to focus on with regards to existing or future acquisition of wetlands is to make sure that we've got greater connectivity of those acquisitions. So with that, we're not only acquiring wetlands, but we're acquiring larger parcels that are connected so that we enhance wildlife, being able to use it without being run over by cars, and that we have a better recharge to our groundwater, which is critically important to Lee County when we talk about the impacts to the Hawthorne Aquifer, which I'm sure questions will come up to that here in a few minutes. But in addition, the DRGR is under threat, which is a density reduction groundwater recharge area, which serves a big purpose for recharging our aquifer, and it has a lot to do with the wetlands as well. So in that short amount of time, I would be a champion to preserve our groundwater and wetlands.
Thank you. Mr. Gonzalez?
I too support the 2020 plan for preserving and taking account our wetlands. As I stated before, I will work with those who are in the scientific and expert area of dealing with our wetlands to make sure that we protect our environment. I was going to say that coping with, let's say, saltwater intrusion involves 3 major steps. That means monitoring and assessment, regulation, and engineering structures that are needed to make sure that we work with our environment, and particularly in our wetlands, which are very important for us to have, and to establish adaptation measures and implementation plans with cost analysis to address sea level rise, as well as looking at making sure that we preserve our wetlands.
Thank you. Mr. Drycorn, would you support solar power in Lee County? And if you would, how will you promote it? And would you install it on county buildings?
Yeah, so as technology progresses, so do the economic models for installing solar. We just have to look to the Babcock Ranch as a wonderful example of where it's being successfully applied. So I would not waste taxpayer dollars on frivolous investments, but clearly where the technology is showing that there's a return on the investment and serves a greater purpose with regards to possibly educating residents as well. I certainly think God has blessed us with an immense amount of solar here in Florida, and it would be a sin for us not to harvest it. So and personally, my own residents, we're in the process of doing that as well. So it makes a lot of sense, but we need to make sure that we balance the economics, the technology with the application, and do it where it makes sense. And clearly go ahead and start doing it now.
Thank you. Mr. Gonzalez?
Funny, we were talking about that issue in our own community because I organized and presented forums by which we spoke on the whole thing of solar energy and trying to help the community be informed of what the benefits in terms of costs and benefit to their saving dollars and to be able to utilize that as a new tool in our new industry. And technology is a way to go with solar. And I think it should be applied to all our county facilities because it will lower the costs by using the greatest resource that we have, which is the sun. And again, like Mr. Daquan, we need to look at what is the return on our investment by making sure that we utilize this technology for the good of the community and for.
Thank you. Mr. Mann?
I like both answers from these other two candidates as I was listening to them. Solar is certainly a major part of the energy picture for the foreseeable future. We've come a long, long ways in the last 20, 25 years. The cost, unfortunately, at this point of providing solar energy has not yet made itself work out in terms of payback for the amount you invest, or for the amount of savings that you need to achieve in order to get your initial investment back. But that gap is closing every year, and to the extent, like Dr. Drycorn said, that we can do this economically at the county level, certainly we should explore every opportunity to do that.
Thank you. Mr. Gonzalez, what are your plans to implement safer streets in Lee County?
That's always a challenge for our communities. I believe that I would implement, first of all, sitting down with all the sheriff's department and the community, bringing them together to talk about what concerns their community. I think that we need to listen to each other. We need to find ways in which we can return to the idea of officer friendly. I instituted in previous communities where we brought the police department and the sheriff's department to come together and to institute neighborhood watch, the community itself learning to police themselves by way of neighbor helping neighbor, being in the watch out. So informing people how to safeguard their community and to work with the local police department as partners, not to see them as just one who is there to look at them as one to protect and to provide safety. But I think it begins with a dialogue. With
Mr. Mann? The Florida Constitution and the way the legislature has set up the governments of the Sheriff's Department and the Board of County Commissioners, we are in a partnership with the local sheriff. But he has the constitutional authority to make decisions on how the Sheriff's Department is going to be run. He has to come to the County Commission for approval of his budget. I'm happy to say that in the time that I've been privileged to serve on the commission, we've had a wonderful working relationship with the previous sheriff, and the same goes for the sheriff today. But the policy issues that come up as to how many sheriffs or deputies he's going to have in what part of the town and what they're going to focus on, whether it's speeding tickets or mass murders, these are still constitutionally in his hands to make those priority decisions. And then we work it out as a partnership with him through the budget process.
Thank you. Dr. Drycorn?
So the question's about Lee County. Lee County's big, right? And the truth of the matter, the county commission only has control or influence over the unincorporated parts of Lee County. Though there are some global municipal planning that occurs as well, it's the 5 cities that really control the majority of the streets within those cities, whereas the county will have some of the major county roads. So, but you know, the fact that we had 3 children run over at school bus stops on their way to school or on the way home from school is just unfathomable. We have to do a better job at making sure that we are teaching driver's ed in school better. We can work with the school board to make sure that that occurs. And I would echo Commissioner Mann's position on the sheriff. The sheriff does have a responsibility here. My perspective on it, the county commission does provide the budget. The county commission has a responsibility to make sure that that budget is spent in getting the enforcement boots on the ground.
Thank you. Mr. Mann, under your leadership, how would you protect the integrity of the Citizens Initiative Conservation 2020?
We made reference to that earlier on, and all 3 of us were strongly supportive of that. We have chiseled in stone in the county right now the 2020 program. There is an ordinance that spells out and defines how the program is going to be funded, what type of parcels we're going to be looking to preserve. That's all very clear right now. I can't imagine anybody, especially coming to challenge that and try to undo that, especially since the voters just a year ago voted close to 90% in support of the 2020 program. We don't have another program in county government that enjoys that clarity of support by the citizens, and God bless them. I'm proud of them for their position.
Thank you. Mr. Drycorn?
I echo what Commissioner Mann just said. The 2020 program is incredibly important to Lee County to ensure we sustain and preserve the way of life here in Lee County, the uniqueness that we have here in Lee County. You hear that little puppy in the background. But it's you know, the reality is we move here for a reason. And the reason is for the beauty of what God gave us here in Southwest Florida. And that includes the water, the land, the flora. And with regards to ensuring the sustainability of it, as Commissioner Mann says, it is carved in stone in an ordinance. But I think we could go a couple of steps further and look at our charter and bolden the charter language to ensure that it incorporates the preservation of nature and perpetuity. And I have a vision that it needs to be actualized for generations to come, 100 years maybe.
Thank you. Mr. Gonzalez?
Of the 2020 plan, and like Mr. Draghorn and Mr. Mann, I believe that we should support what the voters already supported. And that is amazing that 90% of our community said yes to preserving our environment, because our environment is our economy. We have to remember that. And also the fact that we need to be good stewards of the land, air, and sea.
Thank you. Mr. Drycorn, what steps would you propose to ensure smart growth in Lee County?
So first off, with regards to smart growth, we need to have a long-term vision of what we want to be when we grow up. Currently, we do it in increments of 20 years. I think in order to preserve Lee County so it doesn't become a Broward County, we need to stretch that vision out to 100 years. And that will influence all of our other planning with regards to where we put parks, where we put roads, where we allow industrial areas to be developed. So I think as a community, what we need to do is come together, have a dialogue about what it is we want to be when we grow up, and to identify, and we've already got land use planning, but really let's think about it, not just from the here and today, but what would we want to pass on to our great grandchildren and have what we have today for them.
Thank you. Mr. Gonzalez?
Urban life is a fact of life in the county. As more people migrate into the area, the county government has a role to play in the plan for its growth. And the growth brings change, and it affects the economic trends and the population shifts. As the population shifts and the shifting in environmental, social, and economic dimensions. The question, how do we cope with growth and change, is that if the county does bury its head in the sand, we will see that it will have and pose threats to our community. More of our community will be disgruntled because we didn't prepare for the future. But I believe that we need to look at new ways in which we could come to looking at the fact that we have an opportunity now to make better decisions based on planning, to better roads and lines, and to expand those services and to see how we're going to pay for it, which is going to be the challenge in itself. So unplanned growth will pose problems if we don't engage. And
Mr. Mann?
Smart growth is an expression that you've heard a whole lot in Florida over the last 20 years or so. It grew over the fact that for the previous 100 years or so, we engaged in what would be referred to nowadays by anybody as unsmart growth. The priority of the United States of America and the state of Florida, and to the extent Lee County was just a teeny county then, during all those years, was to see how much land we could clear, how much we could drain so that we could farm it. And little by little, that farming turned into golf courses and condominiums. But the practice of draining the areas so that we could exploit them for various economic and agricultural uses turned out the way we were doing it was very poorly done. And that's why we use smart growth so much, and to a large extent, through our comprehensive plans and our state planning, we are finally getting around to doing it well.
Thank you. Mr. Gonzalez, how would you protect Lee County's groundwater recharge area?
once again, I'm not a scientist, nor an expert in the area, but I will work as much with those who are engaged, working also with those who are thought leaders, the universities, and the state and the federal, to bring about how we can mitigate the issues of protecting our water systems. There are reports out there and we need to study them, but also we need to think about how we're going to raise the dollars to be able to mitigate, because it's one thing is to know the problem, but the second thing is that we need to know is what is going to be the solutions, how we're going to monitor and to begin the process of protecting our waterways.
Thank you. Mr. Mann?
We have areas that are described under our comprehensive plan as a DRGR, and they were set aside for specific protection for groundwater recharge and our groundwater resources in general. What I have seen occur, sadly, is that little by little, the county commission has allowed for that protection to be chipped away piece by piece. And there's a lot of times now we are seeing development going on where the county commissioners 30 years ago had established this classification for protection, because they were, for the first time, looking far ahead and knowing that we needed to protect our water resources and the recharge areas in particular. More can be done to preserve the integrity of the DRGR lands, and we still must be careful on all of the lands that we protect our underground aquifers.
Thank you. Mr. Drycorn?
So I would echo what Commissioner Mann said with regards to the DRGR. Absolutely critical that we protect that area. It's there for a reason. Now, we share a common aquifer. It's called the Hawthorne Aquifer. It feeds not only Lee, but Collier, Charlotte, and Henry counties as well. We muck around with that. We impact not only our own residents, but we impact the entire region. So we must understand that we are not only stewards of Lee County, we are stewards of that aquifer. So in addition to protecting the DRGR density as it stands now, I would also be an opponent to any further expansion to the limestone. That limestone serves a purpose in filtration of our water, our groundwater, as it recharges. And one last area with regards to the recharge, there's technologies in asphalt that we can create roadways that are porous. They serve the utility of transporting us, but also allow the water to leach back into the ground and recharge. That's a lot of surface water.
Thank you. Mr. Mann, what measures would you propose to meet the affordable and attainable housing in Lee County?
Well, you know, we get asked a lot of questions about affordable and attainable housing, but when it gets right down to it, it's very difficult to define precisely who you're talking about and socioeconomically, who are these people, and are they truly being ignored today? And I frankly don't think that's the case. Back in my legislative days, we worked carefully and closely, surprisingly, some people would say today, with the real estate industry, who pushed for what is known today as the Sadowski Act, where we set aside millions of dollars, and it's been hundreds of millions over the years, for affordable housing, so that the counties could put up their own match and make certain that we don't have people that are just barely able but can't qualify. We're taking care of them through that Sadowski Act today, and Lee County is one of the leaders in taking advantage of that opportunity.
Thank you. Mr. Drycorn?
Sure, I want to just carry on where Commissioner Mann was on that. The Sadowski Trust Fund is a very important tool that we have. It's funded by the tax stamps that are applied at each real estate transaction. A lot of us here in Lee County or Southwest Florida in general get paid by sunshine, not dollars. And so our economy is serviced by teachers and firefighters and police and sheriffs that are first responders, but they're not paid a lot. They can afford rent, but the problem is they have a hard time getting enough money for that down payment or the closing fees. The Sadowski Trust Fund does exactly that. It provides assistance for those who need it to get into a home. The last 10 seconds, there's also other things that we could be doing and planning, such as addressing our mixed use to ensure that we cut down on the amount of time people have to commute from work to home, and that reduces expenses as well.
Thank you. Mr. Gonzalez?
I'm in agreement with both statements shared, but we need to meet the housing shortage head on in Lee County with a range of different housing types that makes it possible for seniors to stay in their homes, in their neighborhoods as they age, young people to afford their first home, and families at all stages in their lives between to find safe and attractive home they can afford. We need to work on attainable housing by commissioning, planning, and granting development to enable organizations who are working and in housing and to meet the demand of housing. The need for working in coalitions and collaboration will encourage sharing of expertise and capacity building, such as the SHIP program that can be used from the state, as well as the sales funding that is available to reduce dollars.
Thank you. Mr. Drycorn, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers held a citizens 12-week, 2-day-a-week Southwest environmental impact study that looked at wetlands and uplands for reasonable growth in Lee County. Would you educate yourself about the EIS findings? And And why or why not?
Yeah, well, with regards to educating myself, I have an incurable thirst for education. One of the things that I pride myself on is while I will take input from staff, those who also are informed, I like to validate and verify. So the short answer is absolutely, I would look at the findings. Not only would I look at those findings, I would expand my understanding of what's all out there. With regards to like our groundwater and what have you, I've been reading U.S. Geological Survey reports that have been authored 40, 50 years ago because our ground hasn't changed. So there's a lot of information out there. All you have to do is have the willingness to go out and look, not rely on others to educate yourself, and have the ability to have critical thought and ask the critical questions. And I can do that.
Thank you. Mr. Gonzalez?
Absolutely. I'm also one who thirsts for knowledge and experience, knowing the issues, or at least become familiar with issues. Is always, I take the time to learn and always try to stick to the issues and the facts. As county commissioner, I would need to focus on what is best for the county, and always remembering that what is best is to know the facts and to take the time to learn so that we can come to a better decision in providing the right services.
Thank you. Mr. Mann?
We are studied to death in the state of Florida, and the core study here is a valuable one and the most recent one. And I can tell you it would be irresponsible, in my judgment, for any public servant not to make himself aware of the very latest findings. What frustrates me is the Corps of Engineers has had study on top of study. The South Florida Water Management District has had studies impacting all of our water sources or examining them. Lee County has had its own set of studies. There are private studies, too many to count. And what frustrates me, and I've discussed this with many public officials, is we don't spend enough time talking together, all of the people making these studies, and trying to find common grounds on which we can make public policy. So the studies are critically important, but the communication with one agency to another is even more important, or nothing happens.
Thank you. Mr. Gonzalez, what measures would you propose to protect Lee County's water quality?
Can you repeat that again?
Yeah, what measures would you propose to protect Lee County water quality?
Once again, what I would propose is that we begin to start looking at what policies do we currently have in order to be able to implement further the need to protect our waterways. As I said before, we need to look at monitoring and assessments, look at our regulations, and what are the engineering structures currently established. We need to establish adaptation measures and implementation plans with cost analysis and to address the issue of sea level rise or the water issues in our community and in our county.
Thank you. Mr. Mann?
Well, it's not that we don't already have regulations up the wazoo about what you do with your water and to protect it. And nothing comes to mind that's something new we need to add. We are at the county level right now doing exhaustive studies on waste disposal, particularly from septic tank fields. We've got one in North Fort Myers we're studying, and we're probably going to be, based on some preliminary findings, making some major steps to reverse the pollution that seems to be occurring there year after year, especially when you get heavy rains. We've got information right now. We just need the collective will of 3 county commissioners at the same time to be able to have the courage to vote the dollars to make some of the corrective measures that are required.
Thank you. Mr. Drycorn?
So there's two types of water. There's the water we drink and there's the water we swim in. We've spoke a lot about the Hawthorne Aquifer, so I'm going to table that. The water we swim in is critically important to our ecology, our infrastructure, our quality of life, to the reason we move here. So advocacy to DC and Tallahassee will continue. That's a given. But we also need to hold at the county level everybody who contributes to that nasty footprint of contamination accountable, whether it's within the four walls of Lee County or upstream. So we need to be more aggressive on accountability. We do have study on top of study with regards to septic systems. Time to put the books down. We know where the problems are and mandate recurring inspections and removal of septics that are failing or repair. We also need to talk about our groundwater that we're using with regards to the stormwater runoff. We need to be smarter on that. And we need to harmonize the 5 municipalities in the county fertilizer ordinances. They're all different.
Thank you. Mr. Mann, what challenges do you see for Lee County because of the COVID-19 impact on county resources?
Oh, Mr. Pellstring, that's a very tough question because we don't have books to look up what they did 20 years ago or 50 years ago like we have in so many other challenges that face us. This is brand new. They're learning at the White House. They're learning at the governor's mansion. They're studying. They're trying things, and they're throwing them out and trying something else. We are learning as we go. We have taken steps to shut down our society as we know it. We're under a lot of pressure politically right now to go back to what some people call normal. That is not going to be easy because the numbers as we speak are getting worse and worse. So I'm open to suggestions. I'm trying to learn as fast as we can, but I will confess that I've got a lot to learn too.
Thank you. Mr. Drycorn?
So I think the question is about the impact of COVID-19 on Lee County. Clearly, It's been a significant impact, not only economically, but emotionally for our entire community. And I don't think we need to look back and point finger or blames on what was done and what wasn't done. But what we do need to do is collect our lessons learned and move very quickly in a direction of preventative and corrective action with as a county. We know where some of our challenges were. We need to firm them up. I think there's things that we need to do with our public health ordinances. We need to be able to go into a supermarket and have confidence that every one of those carriages we touch have been cleaned before we put our hands on it. We need to have confidence that the public health ordinances are working on the behalf of the citizens in a constructive way without being overly burdensome as well. But so echoing Commissioner Mann, there's a lot we didn't know, but there's a lot we do know now, and we need to take appropriate action.
Thank you. Mr. Gonzalez?
The jury is still out on the whole issue of the pandemic. We're still living it. I know that we are living in uncertain times, and we have to stick to the science and to the facts rather than different theories about the pandemic, because we're seeing the tragedy is occurring in the amount of cases and people dying. And we have to be helping our citizens to be more responsible for each other, wearing the mask and to be at distance. So the best thing is to follow the science and follow the instructions so that we don't impact further and see more of our citizens being ill or being sick. So I'm still learning myself, like Commissioner Mann. This is something that we're all struggling with as a county. But I think that the most important thing that we can tell our citizens is to be responsible and to think about their neighbor.
Thank you. Mr. Drycorn, what leadership will you provide to meet the human services resource needs in Lee County? And do your plans include a Children's Services Council?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest challenges we have, or gaps that we have here in Lee County, is mental health. Whether we look at what's available through the Lee Health system or the health and human services that we have today, there is a big gap. So I would be a champion to address that gap, building coalitions with the private sector and our public sector. And part of that does include supporting an investigation of whether or not a committee is as you referenced, is feasible and how would it be paid for. The important thing is that we're looking at not only those that are of adult age, but what are we doing to make sure that the kids who are going to become future citizens have what they need to be a properly tooled citizen with regards to mental health, physical health, and education.
Thank you. Mr. Gonzalez?
I share the opinion that our children are our most valuable asset in the county, and I'm sure no one would disagree with that. However, there were residents who throughout Lee County who expressed support for the need of a Children's Services Council. There is no secret of my support on putting the Children's Council idea on the ballot. A movement grew to try and bring necessary funding to children's programs in the county. This referendum was to go before the voters and establish an independent Children's Council for the county, but county residents urged county commissioners without success order a referendum and creating the CSC, and citizens throughout the county need to be the ones to speak on the issue and not just the county commissioners. Citizens throughout county have supported the need of this referendum because they see the deficiencies that exist in children's programs. And through my leadership on the board, I will call on another referendum.
Thank you. Mr. Mann?
With regard to the Children's Services Council, that issue came before the County Commission a little over a year ago. I was the sole vote in the form of a motion that I made that did not receive a second to put the issue of a Children's Services Council on the ballot for the citizens of Lee County to decide whether they wanted to pursue it or not. I think the citizens would support such a move. It provides for a small tax to be levied, the revenues of which would go directly to children's programs, some of which I believe are terribly underfunded today. We have a lot of good social service programs in Lee County today, supported by the private sector, and we match them. And we increased that funding within the last 24 months substantially, but there's still more we can do.
Thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Mann, you gave your opening statement last, so you will give your closing statement first.
Well, one more thank you to the League of Women Voters for what they've been doing for so many years down here to keep the public informed without taking specific positions and trying to meddle in the politics, and the ugly politics sometimes it's referred to. I have been honored to serve the people of Lee County in different capacities for quite a number of years. I serve because I care about this county. It's my home all of my life. It's a paradise. We do have people, though, that would take advantage of that paradise, and they would pave us wall to wall in concrete and asphalt. And I have been fighting that my entire career. And that is still my priority, whether it's water or the wetlands or the wildlife habitats. I want to preserve something of which our forefathers found when they came here. And that's why Thomas Edison came and stayed. That's why the Calusa Indians came and stayed. And I want our great-grandchildren to be able to enjoy some of what I have enjoyed and that we all enjoy today. So that will be my continual battle cry as a public official. I'm honored to have served the people of Lee County for the time I have. I hope you'll allow me to continue for another term. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Mr. Gonzalez?
Well, I bring new energy and new vision for our county, and throughout my entire career in public service, for over 40 years, I have been a champion of policies and programs protecting all community residents, advancing the quality of life for all, and providing assistance for underserved and at-risk communities. I see myself being champion of the causes of children and families, encouraging and empowering our youth, and turning their faith into action. I have been a staunch advocate for quality education, inclusion, and diversity and opportunities, and at the workplace, safe and clean water, the environment as a steward, and supporting small businesses and creating healthy communities and stabilizing our community with affordable housing. I meet wonderful people every day. I walk the streets of my community. I go to meetings. I do one-on-ones with the community leaders, and I find people in all of them. And what I've heard and found in all they said that they want is a safe and progressive, harmonious community with leadership that take their interests and issues to heart. Whether you vote for me or not, I want you to know that I will be for you. And remember, your vote is your voice.
Thank you. Mr. Drycorn?
Again, I want to thank everybody for participating in this forum, and to the two other candidates that showed up. It's very important for voters to hear, see, and understand where the candidates are coming from. And I want to thank the moderators as well for doing a splendid job. So when I signed up to run for a county commissioner, it was January of 2019. And it's been a while since I've been campaigning, and it's been an interesting ride so far. I've listened to a lot of people all over the county. And when on the day I filed, I wanted to tag the mission, the objective of what my candidacy represents. And I boiled it down to principles over politics, because we frequently get divided over party politics, but at the local level, we have so much in common. You know, it's that national level or even at the state level that divides us. So I'm the candidate for District 1 that wants to unite everybody, not divide us. I am not driven by any party. I belong to a party. I'm a Republican. But you know, I believe that we as leaders have a responsibility to be independent of party, focus on the principles, have the aptitude for critical thought, know when questions have to be asked, and know when the responses that you're receiving may not be accurate. So I've got a great pedigree. It was all self-developed, so a military guy. I've got lots of degrees, and what I would like to encourage you to do is go to my website, votedrycorn.com. Find out as much as you'd like about me. My life is open and transparent, and please reach out to me if you have any questions you'd like to ask me one-on-one. I'm easy to get to.
Thank you. That concludes the forum for Districts 1 and 5 for the County Commission in Lee County. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. You can find this posted on the League of Women Voters website pretty quick. I think within a week. I don't want to put anything on Bill, but he's getting this stuff done really quick. So wonderful forum, wonderful to have you here. I'm sure the voters of Lee County will like this forum. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.